Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Eli, 10th Man, Neil, who else did I miss out? Chocolate Sane, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Morning, morning.
Afternoon.
Good morning.
You.
Who are you, Jimmy? 2 times 10. Morning. I'm gonna go get the papers.
Greeting.
Right, I'm going to do the housekeeping. Any evidence of a physical... Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon, formerly known as the curve of the Earth?
You're gonna need R.
You know, I tell you, Nathan, when you come out with it, it just cracks me up. Your timing is impeccable, boy.
I just checked my script. That's right, Neil. Timing is everything. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
Since it's all a presupposition, assumption to build their false reality for us, no, you're still going to need R for that.
Also might need access for that too.
Also, you might need to beg the question.
What, assume an R value? Yes, that's correct. Surprised the panel didn't say it. No, nobody? You're going to need R for that.
Saying too much.
I can't hear it enough. I've got to be honest. I don't. We haven't until now had a concise way of ending each housekeeping question. If we did want to rattle through them, there was always, if I was like, right, let's dispense the housekeeping quickly, as opposed to dispense with it completely, like we did yesterday. It didn't even dispense with it, didn't even come up. But there was a good conversation with Crack Villain, I think his name was. Good chap. Hopefully we'll have him back on our main regular panel. I've added him, or asked for him to be added to the Skype server that is used to build up this panel that you can see with Tim Osman in the background and his toe tag. Anywho, that conversation resulted in no housekeeping, but should we do them and we say, look, we've got a conversation but we still want to actually dispense with all of these questions because it's preemptive for anything this fundamentalist religious zealot we're going to be debating with is going to say, so let's rattle through him anyway and see what his answer is, or her answer is, before we actually get back into whatever was being debated in the pre-show, which does happen occasionally. And in this instance, you just have to say, you need R for that. There's a couple of exceptions, but for the most part, you can just say, yeah, you're going to need R for that. Earth curve? You're going to need R for that. Axial rotation? You're going to need R for that. So I don't mind if that's the answer, even if it's not a day that we're looking to keep the housekeeping concise, because it's absolutely the case. Whoever just said that from Discord is spot on. Aren't we going to need to beg the question? Yep. And what we're going to use to beg that question of a sphere Earth beneath our feet? Well, the R value, inserted into whatever we're doing. Any evidence of the R value? Earth, radius. Any evidence?
No. You're gonna need R. Someone yesterday. Oh no. Actually, no. I'll wait because it's more appropriate for another one, for another housekeeping question.
Any scientific evidence of gravity?
No.
What's that?
In fact, the G in there is from the center, so you're definitely going to need R for that. But someone told me it has nothing to do with R.
Can't have G without
I
R.
said, what? I said,
That
you need to
happened
go
to me
from
too.
one center of a presupposed sphere to another center of a presupposed sphere. You're going to need what? I don't know what these people are on.
Yeah, you're going to need R for that.
Yeah, somebody in chat did that to me. Say, no, you do not need a radius for gravity.
The centre of
Okay.
M1. What's that then? Centre of M1 is the Earth radius.
Exactly.
Didn't they just say that about the sextant? It has nothing to do with triangulation?
Good point.
But if you already have a radius, why would you ever say that you don't need a radius?
When it's been debunked by the Black Swan, then whenever it comes up, you say, wow, you don't need that. It's like Earth curve. Well, Earth curve blocks boats and buildings. Here's the drop value. Man, you're going to need a radius value and a physical edge for that. We don't need an edge. Spheres don't even have edges. What are you talking about? There's no edge to block the boat I just said was getting blocked by the sphere edge that I'm claiming has got a drop value. What do you mean? We don't need Earth curve. In other words, they are, on the anti-flat Earth side of this argument, more than willing to relinquish the fundamental premise of the globe argument they're defending if we debunk it. They'll just relinquish it. Like a, I don't know, coyote gnawing off its own legs when it's caught in a bit of barbed wire. I don't need those. I'll just chew them off.
Yeah, let's argue about whether a sphere has an edge or not instead of talk about how it's actually supposed to be blocking something.
Right.
Remember how that was like the hot comeback to the Black Swan and to when we were saying you guys have a physical sphere edge? They were like, spheres don't have edges. And that's where they stood for about 10 minutes.
Got a standard chat response to that now. So, any children listening, cover your ears. So, if the edge of my balls can block the view of my feet, but the physical geometric sphere edge horizon that used to block boats and buildings has been debunked by the Black Swan. You can uncover their ears now.
Why did I just come in?
Me talking about my balls. I'm sorry, Arwin.
Hello.
You should have said earmuffs for Arwen. Earmuffs.
The bottom line is they're relinquishing their own claim. They'll spend all day holding up beach balls and showing you that something that's beyond the geometric edge of the beach ball can have the bottom of it blocked. That's them showing you a physical geometric limitation based on a sphere, basketball, whatever they're using, blocking something in the distance. Exactly as is shown, or was 2 seconds ago on screen. You know, they have a side profile view claiming that you're having a physical Earth curve edge like the ball blocking whatever it is in the distance. As soon as you point out that it's beyond those geometric limitations of physicality to block stuff, they go, we don't need an edge. What's that? What edge? Spheres don't have edges. What are you talking about?
I've been told by a couple of people in comments on my channel, on my latest video, that the speed of light has nothing to do with the distance to Belarus. So that's another relinquishment, isn't it?
Yeah, it's fundamental to it. What are they talking about?
Who knows? I mean, they're just like Bob the science guy said that he didn't say it had nothing to do with the speed of light, but he said because I don't like the speed of light, he'll say they gave it to me in parsecs. It's like, well, you're missing the point, Bob. The speed of light is the whole distance to your supposed Polaris, so 443 light years. You know, and then I have other commenters telling me that it has nothing to do with the speed of light. And another guy told me, he said the distance to Polaris and the whole angle thing has nothing to do with C or R, right? The C being the speed of light, and the radius value.
Brian, just don't talk about the light in the light years, man.
Yeah.
Right? Don't talk about that. Just ignore that. Maybe the flat earthers are silly and you'll just ignore that we measure that shit in light years. Don't.
It's things like Einsteinian light years that tie them into specific R values and the scale being set at a particular distance to the sun. You know, those things are pretty difficult to change when you've got fixed speed for the light to travel over and all of those assumptions tie into the way that it's scaled with Kepler's third law. But if you're going to back engineer other aspects of other things into that, like the speed of light, it gets it more cemented at a certain value. They can't get away from the value of R because it's tied in so many intrinsic ways. And that's as it should be. I'm not complimenting the heliocentric model in this regard, but, obviously if they're claiming it's a rock at a set radius value, then that rock radius value should not change. And it doesn't, for the most part. I mean, it has. You can easily find references and examples of that. Same with the distance to the sun. But once you have a sort of more coherent model and more aspects of it tie in with other aspects like how far is it based on how fast the light's travelling as opposed to how we scale it, with Kepler's third law, you can make the two tally and go, well, that's right then. It gives more credence to your claim when you're applying what you see to a philosophy. Or in this case, the mathematics of a speed of a light, which I don't even think's got a journey to measure the speed of, but that's just my own personal opinion. That it ties it in more for them, which, like I say, on the one hand, it's a double-edged sword. It lends more credence. Look, this all matches up. If you calculate the distance to the sun by way of scale, and then you do it by way of using Einsteinian mathematics, they both come out the same. Check it out. So that must mean it's right? Well, no, not at all. You've just got a nice, consistent notion that ties you to a specific R value. So when we destroy that R value, it in turn destroys almost everything else that we cover in housekeeping because they're all dependent on it.
I put up a video there just on the topic of the housekeeping question we're on. I put up a video to Quantum Eraser in the war room in the past few days, and it was from Jaronism, and he was covering a conversation that Brandon Toy had with Bob the Science Guy last month. And Bob the Science Guy gave a calculation of the radius of the Earth based on the apparent horizon, and it was 15,000 plus miles. So, and he literally said that that it's still a sphere, it's just bigger than we thought. So he's relinquished the R value. Yeah, it's in that. He relinquished the R value.
Yeah, it changes everything. So it throws his distance to the sun. For the very reason I've just given in terms of why it needs to be cemented in stone, metaphorically and physically, in their reification of their model. That's why you can't just change it. I mean, we had the same response to the Black Swan. Oh, well, that's just got a bigger radius. People don't realise the implications. So when Mr. Sensible said at best you've debunked the radius, he's just like, well, that just means it's bigger, right? No. Suddenly the entire model collapses in on itself if you change that value. So, no, it's not just as good as, well, so what, you've changed the radius? No, physical rocks don't have changing radii. That's not how it works. Certainly not how you're claiming it works when you demand that we accept, based on that radius, that there's a physical obstruction called Earth curve edge. That premise is what you're fighting for. So to tell us you don't have it anymore is to tell us you don't have a sphere Earth beneath your feet anymore.
I'm telling you, they don't think before they answer.
Or we live on a dodgeball or a spongy ball or something.
I had something on a personal note. I saw that video from Jaren, and I'm going to do this. I hate criticising my own side, and I'm being told by a few other people, don't do this, don't attack your own side. But I'm going to do it anyway, right? I'm sorry, Jaren, I've got to do this. I give you lots of props, so this isn't like... Just take it for what it is, right? I had to tell 10th off the same thing.
Let's put the weight of... Yeah, I love Jaren too. Yeah, just to soften. Okay, I love you.
We love Jaren, right? Jaren's ace. Just say that first and foremost. I know that's why Eli's going, oh, what's going to go on? What's going down? I've got to defend Jaren. Right, don't worry about it. Right, 10th did the same thing. Started talking about Bob and immediately got into how creepy his eyes were and how scary he looks and how much he's fearful of him personally. Right, can we stop doing this? Right, it's the third time it's happened. I almost stopped QE from doing it when he just led with it. So I'm like, I can't cut him off immediately. But that was basically what QE led with. And then following that, 10th man then followed it. I agree with QE. Look how creepy his eyes are. And then Jaren did the same thing. He led with that. It's like, God, can we not just focus on the argument? Can we please stop talking about how creepy Bob the Science Guy's eyes are and how scary he looks and how he's like, you wouldn't want to be around him and all this other personal crap that's just not relevant to his argument when it comes to the sextant or increasing radius values to be on the size of the presupposed orbital path of the moon in the case of the black swan. That's what we have to focus on, not how bloody creepy his eyes are, Jaron. So just please.
I never got to.
Jaron is.
I never got to. You cut me off so fast. I never got to say what I wanted to say. So
I knew where you were going immediately. I agree with QE. If you look at his eyes, I've been a salesman.
No, but I never got to finish it, and I was going to respond to what the QE said about his eyes, but that'll be for another day.
Just for a day, never, hopefully. But yeah, it's just one of those. I cut you off. I cut you off immediately because it just tarnishes the argument.
I'm a good pupil of eyes.
And what are you worried about?
I can't lie.
I'll answer that. Neil, ask that question again, please.
What are you worried about? Jaron is not Bob. He can handle it.
I'm not worried about Jaron. I'm worried about the general perception of our argument in absolute terms. Unfortunately for us, we are under 3,000% scrutiny by comparison to our anti-flat earth counterparts that can literally make mistakes overtly and have their compadres pat them on the back and just sort of brush it under the carpet, move the subject along so it's not noticed. Things of that nature happen all the time. Us, if we get a comma wrong, that's held against us. Now, me, I'm all day long being told about my attitude towards people, so it's not like I'm an angel or anything, but how creepy and scary Bob the Science Guy's eyes are, you know, it's just one of those things that seems to be getting focused on just a little bit more than it maybe needs to be. So, you know, can we just maybe potentially lay off talking about how creepy Bob the Science Guy looks? Yeah, okay, he looks creepy. Can we all move past that now?
I totally agree. I mean, I never see the point in pointing out physical things. I have no interest. Like, whatever someone looks like is what they look like. He's very confident in himself if you hear him talk. So he has certainly no problem with his own appearance. And if there's anything going on with his eyes, it might have something to do with the fact that he just had to relinquish a belief that was held for God knows how long. You know, so that won't help. That won't help the glazed look in someone's eyes.
Well, you gotta have somewhat of a glazed look if you're gonna have a full conversation with Brenda about fish coming out of nothing and how did it know to be food. Like, I mean, imagine the intelligence level in that conversation right there. So yeah,
that's a man after my own heart right there, Chocolate. So exactly, if you're gonna do that, do it the way Chocolate's done it. A subtle dig on topic that's actually got 20-30% of educational value in that statement that Chocolate just made, but a nice little jab below the ribs, right, Chocolate? That's the way to do it.
Well, if we took a vote right now, the nays would lose, the ayes would have it.
Kent sees this very clearly.
But
Right.
on that note, though, I do want to give Jared a shout out because I turned on his live stream the other day, and he had like what do you call it? The NASA Comedy Hour or something like that.
That was
I saw that too.
Oh my God!
Can we all just confirm
I
that?
don't know what happened to Jared, but he's
on fire.
All over the place now, bro. What? It was the funniest thing I've heard in
I'm glad you're not the only one to notice this. So
I
good.
loved it.
yeah, let's do a concise shout out to Jaron, because I don't know what he's changed in the last, I don't know, it's probably the last fortnight, but I found myself clicking on Jaron video after Jaron video after Jaron video, going, this is ace. Wow, this is great. Oh, wow, I'll leave a comment on this. You know, in other words, everything he's putting out at the moment, I'm picking up, man. I love it. So all of Jaron's stuff, check me out. I've given him a criticism after. I'm just like every other troll dick out there, aren't I? I know, you know, but now we've cleared that up. Let's move on to the actual end of the shit sandwich, which is shouting him out in a good way and saying, man, you're on fire at the moment if you're listening to this, Jaron. I don't know what you've changed or why you've decided to maybe change direction, but it's great. You know, you're on fire as far as I'm concerned. Back to form.
I have to add, I mean, the research he put into his video, and if you haven't watched it yet, Arwen was the first one to put me on to his video. when he came on this show one day and said, "Hey, did you guys see Jeranism's quote that tells us we've all been lied to?" And I've watched that video maybe 3 times now, and it's 3 hours long, and I'm about to watch it for a fourth. Reason being is because even though I knew the Earth was flat, I didn't know that what I was under the impression that academia was under the impression that they had evidence for a heliocentric universe. And quote after quote, they say, we don't have evidence, but that's how we feel. So very big kudos to Jaren for that video.
Right, clearly somebody in the chat's picked up on double-edged sword telling people not to do something. So I'll read out your super chat. Thank you very much for the support, first and foremost. A Bowden 500 says, here's a few quid to buy Bob the Science Guy some dark sunglasses to hide his super creepy eyes. Yeah, okay, telling people not to do something will result in the complete opposite. However, because you've given me money, I'm not going to complain that much. So thank you very much for the super chat. Really appreciate the support. We haven't finished housekeeping, so any evidence of...
Well, if that happens, he'll be a shady character then.
Jeez.
Okay. Look, this subject's going to polarize a lot of people, so...
I see what you did there.
Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
No.
What's the sun anyway?
I don't know.
An apparent distance, perhaps.
Got a speed for it. I'm sure there's something would require to have it, though. What do you reckon, Brian?
Well, it has absolutely nothing to do with the speed of light.
Certainly claim to, though, eh? 1 AU?
The sun has nothing to do with the speed of light.
Yeah, the whole thing is based on it. Based on an R value and the speed of light. There's no distance to anything in the sky. Because they're all lights, and they're all based with the moon. Actually, I'm not sure, I can't remember about the moon. But that's definitely based on an R value. But other than the moon, everything else is based on the speed of light. And I'm sure the moon somehow is based somewhat on the speed of light as well at this stage. But yeah, they're all based on the speed of light. There is no one-way speed of light. So if there is no one-way speed of light, there cannot be a two-way. Because that would mean that one-way would be half of the two-way. Is one-way half of the two-way? No. Who's out there claiming that? Nobody. You know why? Because there is no one-way.
And if there's
no one-way, yeah.
I was going to say, if there's no two-way, there's definitely not going to be a three-way. Story of my life.
Yeah.
But wait, are you saying that...
Story of your life, not mine.
But are you saying that the actual speed of the light wasn't even, like, figured out on Earth? It wasn't even measured? It's based on the assumption of the sunlight?
Can I rephrase that for Brian? How do we get the speed of light, Brian?
Well, if we start off with... are you talking about the one-way speed or the two-way speed?
You're going to ignore
the speed.
Hold on, Neil. Hold on. Arwin, go ahead.
The speed. Get on with it.
No, that's... stop. Arwin, don't do that. Just repeat your question, Brian. If you don't know the answer or you don't know what to ask for, just say that.
Yeah, are you looking for the one-way speed or the two-way speed? So I was asked, which one?
I don't know. I'd prefer a measured speed.
That's okay. You don't know. That's okay. Stop. Hello. Don't need the babble afterwards. He doesn't know, Brian.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. The two-way speed, right? That's not based on the one-way speed because the one-way speed was never measured. The two-way speed is based off of it's based off of several assumptions. I think it's about 3 or 4 assumptions and 2 averages. Okay, the several assumptions start off with we're on a globe, and that globe is rotating, and the globe is going around the sun in an offset elliptical orbit over a 12-month period. The 2 averages is an average of the globe Earth's radius value, something that doesn't exist, and and also the the offset elliptical orbit of the sun, the average of that over a 12-month period. So, like, you know, because the globe Earth is constantly changing its position in accordance to the sun, day to day. So that's what the two-way speed of light is based on 4 assumptions and 2 averages. But the whole lot rests right on 2 things. Well, it rests only on the one-way speed of light. But if you want to be comical about it, it rests on the R value, and there is no R value for the globe Earth. There is a calculated one, or there is a claimed one, but there is no measured R value. So there is no measured speed of light in any way, shape, or form.
Perfect.
How about the one way?
You just explained that.
Well,
Is it just me, or did anybody else? Or maybe it's because I'm a silly Dragon Ball lover, right? Dragon Ball Z lover, but with the story of, oh, if the sun, I mean, I'm sure we've all heard, if the sun went out now, we wouldn't know about it for like 8 minutes, right? So does anybody else just think of, like, at that point in their life, thought of the sun as like a giant Kamehameha just shooting like these light beams away from it in every direction? Because of that ridiculous story of, oh, if it went out now, we wouldn't know about it for 8 minutes.
Yeah,
like
that's
it's just traveling from here to there. It's ridiculous.
The point of the story is to give you this notion with a little story along with it, so you can conceptualize their idea of light having a journey and the time it takes to make that journey. Well, that idea, I think, is something that we potentially have taken out of context with one of our own conventions. Time itself is a concept, so it's one of those. I just think that's a story that's there to lead people to a better understanding conceptually about what they mean when they say this is how light works and this is how fast it goes. Therefore, if it's travelling at a speed, it's got a journey, it's coming out the sun like a bullet, and that bullet will take 7.5, whatever, 8 minutes to get to us. Therefore, if it exploded, it's still set off its last bullet after it exploded. It disappears completely within however long they're going to say this example takes, and then the bullet carries on coming towards you until the last one disappears, and what you then see is the remnants of whatever the bullet equivalent of the explosion would be 8 minutes later. It's just, like you say, a way of making you understand that it's got a journey, and that's how long it's going to take to make that journey.
If I was going to start somewhere to find out what the speed of light is, the first thing I'd find out, well, I think they already have a calculation for this anyway, is the speed of electricity, right? Because electricity is connected to light somehow, right? There's definitely some connection there, right? So what speed does electricity move at?
I don't see it in that way, because when you talk about electricity, it's more like you've got a load of marbles, right? So you've got a load of marbles all in a hose. They're like loose in a hose, but they're all touching each other. Now, if you put one marble in one end of the hose, one falls out the other end. Now, can you ascribe a speed to that? Because technically speaking, each marble's moved very, very, very slowly as you've pushed one in. But the result at the other end, which could be a considerable distance away, is basically instantaneous, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's the correct direction to take, but it's where I'd start. You know, it's where I'd start. Because when I switch on the light in the house here, the light above me on the ceiling, I switch it on and it seems to come on almost instantaneously. But the only thing that might be slowing it down is the electricity getting to it or something. I don't know, but that's where I'd start. Now, I might go nowhere with that. That might end up being a proven null, right? But I don't even know if you could do scientific method on this. How could you do it? If you have to, like, even manipulating light, how is that going to do anything for you? I don't know.
But even if you compare lightning, you mean you'd be timing how long it took to get to ground through a medium. So you could ascribe certain aspects of speed to electricity, but I just think, again, it's like the electricity itself is the lightning, isn't it? As opposed to that moving through a medium to ground, which you could time.
Well, I wouldn't be looking at lightning too much because that's plasma. So that being plasma would cause it to have maybe a different rate than me, the constant rate of me having the light switch on in my room. for 5 hours, whatever that constant rate would be. It'd be more that I'd be looking to measure as opposed to lightning, because I can't. How do you? I don't know. I don't know where you start to measure lightning.
You're looking for the
wow.
speed of
Good question. I don't, hold
incoherent.
on. You just said I don't know where to start when it comes to measuring light. Well, this is right in the realms of scientific discovery, right? That's what we talk about when we talk about things like the delayed choice quantum eraser. It's got a time aspect to it, right? Or the double slit experiment itself, when they're talking about light. Well, why have those things come to pass in the first place? Well, it is the journey of discovery in terms of light, and them trying to study it. That's why they're doing those experiments. It's not like someone just went, oh, I wonder why that light passing between those really, really tiny little aperture between the leaves, why does that light split up like that? Why does it diffract? Nobody's done that. It's like they've done experiment after experiment after experiment, and then they eventually get to that stage. And then beyond that stage, double slit in this example, you go one step further onto the delayed choice quantum eraser, built around similar principles. But the same thing applies, right? In terms of them just deciding to do that double slit or quantum eraser experiment, they didn't. So you could argue, as we do, well, at what point did they come across the natural phenomena in nature as we oversimplify it to pull apart an opponent's argument that often doesn't even have a phenomena? But we'll say, well, where was this observed to occur in nature? Now, so long as it can actually occur in nature, hence me using lightning as an example, then you're perfectly within scientific realms to study it. You don't have to actually go out and see it occurring in nature, as long as it does occur in nature. But that isn't the case in terms of the scientific discoveries that have occurred with light. And every time the subject comes up, and this is, the sort of nail-biting stuff that you get to when, I don't know, a couple of 3 hours of conversation with Quantum Eraser when you're not on a show with him. Not that I do this very often anymore, but back in the day when I used to, you get more and more into the conversation, and the more you learn, the more you realise people don't know very much about how light works.
Yeah, I've wondered about the delayed choice, because isn't it claimed that D0 gets the light before any other detector? Can't you use that to kind of measure this? Like, don't they claim a speed to light in that experiment?
You've got to use the concept to derive the outcome from it, correct? You've got to use a conception to describe what's occurring. That's correct. Now, does it mean that it's dependent on the concept you're using to describe it? No.
Well, quantum eraser and I think Albert Einstein and Veritasium have all been in agreement, I think, that I don't think anyone's going to measure the one-way speed of light. Now, that doesn't mean it's impossible, but it means it's a bit of a task. So I don't know where else you'd start other than lightning. What else do you do? Do you stand by the tape measure and turn on the light really fast?
I'll tell you where you've already started. You've already started with the assumption of a journey. To have a speed, it's got to be making a journey, right? Metaphorically, the bus driver's got to put a cap on, start the engine and drive. Or however that process takes place, that's a journey. Now, I don't... my conceptions of light being instantaneous is how I perceive things. I don't have to wait for light to get to my eyes as far as I'm concerned. Now, if you can demonstrate otherwise, then fine. And if you want to utilise the delayed choice, it's like, no, that's an aspect of explanation within the delayed choice. The delay you can quantify by describing it with our crude understandings of a concept called time. But that isn't the experiment.
I don't know. When I flash a flashlight on the wall, it immediately appears on the wall. So to me, it's instantaneous.
Yeah, but you can't register.
I mean, there's a difference between, I think, lightning and like, the light that's scattered. Isn't lightning more coherent versus like, light scattered through the medium being incoherent? Like, would you even be questioning them like the same, or would you have to question it individually?
I don't know. We're so far from the distance to the sun at this point, and this is so outside of my realm of expertise, if you could consider me to have one.
This is probably why they said, oh, it's 93. Don't worry about it. 93 million. It's far enough.
Well, I think if we're going to study if we were ever, because back because it is back. We'll go back to the sun. If we're going to study the distance, the speed of light, obviously we pre-assume it has a speed, but we're going to have to study the human eye because it's how we perceive something. We perceive light, don't we? We can't say that it has a speed. We can say that we perceive it, as opposed to we also perceive dark. So the human eye has to come into it. Remember thinking about that before. But, you could be on a route to nowhere.
I don't know. I mean, based on double slit, when you say you've got to have an eye, I say you've got to have a knower.
So when they like for the delayed choice, when using a convention, I guess you said to describe. Am I wrong in saying, well, it's more qualitative than quantitative because you see something that you can describe, but it's not like you can time it.
All science is going to be that way, though, isn't it? You can if you just focus on the quantity always, you might have the cause wrong.
Here's a question for you. Does light exist because a blind man can't see it? Or does it cease to exist because a blind man can't see it?
From his perception, it ceases to exist. For him, it ceases to exist.
Wait, but he can see light. That's not even true that blind people can't see light. They can tell the difference between a dark room and a room with the light on.
Well, it depends on the nature of the blindness. If their optic nerve is severed, they can't perceive any light. So it depends on the nature of the blindness. But my point is, I mean, if it's just go ahead.
Well, you've answered your own question. Cannot perceive any light is the same as light doesn't exist to them. If you can't perceive it, it's not in existence to them.
Right, but I'm actually, the question is broader than that, though. Just because he can't perceive it, does that mean the light does not exist? Because if I see the light, but he does not see the light, is the light still in existence?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
okay.
I would say, like as Eli said there, that there is blind people who are considered blind, but they can still see. They can still perceive the difference between a room with a light on or a light off. What is it in their eyes that still allows them to perceive that?
The eyes are not the only organs that perceive light.
That's not his point. That's not what he's driving at. This is, it's non sequitur to his point.
Yeah. Well, my point is that if someone who's considered blind, because I know my own father was considered blind before he passed away, and he only had one eye, and his optic nerve to that eye was damaged. He lost the other eye in a hunting accident. So he was considered blind, but his optic nerve did, like when it was really bad, it kind of improved actually, but when it was really bad, everything just seemed shaded to him. Everything was like dark. Every day was a dark day, but he still could perceive the difference between dark and light. So, what if besides someone who has damage to an optic nerve, what is it that allows them to, or a severed optic nerve, what is that allows them to still see that amount of light? Is it just the same thing as we do? It's just we have we can see a better concentration of it. I don't know.
There was a story, and I'd have to go find it out. It was years and years and years and years ago, so I'd have to go see if it even exists still. But of a man who lost his eye completely, but could still read. I don't know if anybody's ever heard that story, but I remember it from years and years ago. So if you want me to quote it, trying to find the video, it might be a long time trying to find it, but I do remember a story. Now, if that's the case, if the guy can see without an eye, what does that say?
I don't know. It doesn't help us with the distance to the sun.
I've been banned from talking about eyes, so I can't help.
Immediately after you asked that question, I said no. We could have moved on, but I mean, here we are.
Shout out to Bobby Zines. Says, love the show. Keep on trashing that sphere, Nathan. And the panel. Greetings from Wiltshire. Oh, thank you very much indeed, Bobby Zines. Really appreciate the support.
Greetings. Hello.
Maybe we need to...
Definitely can't be a ball of gas in a vacuum.
Any evidence that you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon?
No.
So you can't have gas pressure without a container?
These gas particles
Can't
have
have
weight.
gas.
Weight is down.
No, guys. It's how can you have pressurized gas without a container?
You can't
That's
have
it.
you can't have pressurized gas without a container.
Oh, so that doesn't help then. Oh shit.
I keep hearing about these gas particles that keep putting on weight. I keep hearing this all the time on Discord.
What, gas
Can
go
you guys
down, go
explain
boom
that to
boom?
me, please?
Gas go down, go boom boom with weight. So you qualify it with pressure because its weight is its downward vector. When they say weight, they mean gravity, which would assert that gas goes down, go boom boom like bouncy balls poured into a fish tank, and gas doesn't behave in that way. Gas expands in all directions to fill the availability of volume it has to fill.
Yeah.
No. The rebellious gas particles have won the war on entropy, right? So now they just feast, and now they get fat, and now they have weight. There you go.
Okay, so according to the... What are we going to call this narrative?
I don't know. I started it out with the rebellious gas particles, but I guess we could
Are we still on...
call it something else.
No, that's the working title. The rebellious gas
Gas-related.
particle is, as Chocolate describes, the story of the very first gas particle that was released from planet Earth. And as you can see on screen here with this depiction, Star Wars-esque, which is quite appropriate for this particular analogy or comparison or whatever you want to call it. Very appropriate. So imagine that instead of there being clouds, this is just the very early fledgling Earth, and the very first gas particle emerges from the rocks and flies out like gas does at high velocity and gets to about here and goes, you know what? This whole entropic law nonsense, I'm not going to abide by it. I rebel. I will cast off my bra in rebellion of gas law. And I'm going to stay right here. I will call this line Carmen, and we will stay here and feast. Now, after a time, other particles get up to this point, and they're going, woo-hoo, travelling really fast, but then they see this other particle and go, ho, 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 what are you doing here? It's the law, you got to keep going at high velocity until you bounce into something. And this rebellious gas particle goes, nah, not at all, I'm not having that. Yeah? Gas law. I defy gas law. I'm going to stay here. I'm eating cake. I've burnt my bra and I'm staying here. Want to stay with me? And this other gas particle goes, yeah, you know what? We could make a little community here. And they go, yeah, right, let's all eat cake. So they do. And eventually they get fat and fall down, go boom boom. The end.
So,
Well,
You know how they...
One part wrong there, Nathan. One part wrong.
Hold on, there's a lot of murmurings.
Yeah,
Hold on, we'll have Discord first. Sorry, whoever wanted to go from G+.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, well, the way they rebut this is they say, look at the gas pressure gradient, right? That's evidence that gas doesn't uniformly move in all directions. It stays in density layers. I mean, the higher density
that's
doesn't
not
move
correct.
Hold on.
from high to low. That's what they say,
It
right?
doesn't. That's not correct. That's incorrect. It doesn't do that. There's a bigger concentration of it due to the cycles of gas at the ground level. There's no density layers. That's a made up. There's no evidence. There's absolutely nothing there for that. That doesn't happen. There's a lessing of it as you rise, and it's all due to temperature. Temperature is the only thing that can manipulate gas outside of a solid container.
Brian getting all serious answering. Right.
Sorry.
with the analogy in mind, right? So what we've done in the rebellious gas particle narrative is created a situation where gas can develop. Because if you take the same story, let's forget the farce of the rebellious gas particles in defiance of natural law, right? The gas comes out, and it goes into space. Then some more gas comes out, and it goes out into space. It just comes out and travels in whatever vector it's got until it collides with something. That's what it does. Now, let's say for the sake of argument that one comes out down here and hits the Death Star. Now, that might bounce back towards Earth. It might. Let's say it does. You know what it does when it hits it? Just bounces straight back off again and carries on in whatever direction it's going, in this case, into space. That's what gas does. So within that narrative, unless I give you the rebellious gas particle scenario, how do you develop the gas pressure in the first place?
Well, in the early Earth days, Earth did have a container, and then we lost it when the moon crashed.
What? We did have a container? Did you just make this up on the spot?
Yep.
Yeah, Earth's never claimed to have any containment. Doesn't have, never has had.
We were in a little Earth embryo. Aww. Aww.
Right, the bottom line is
I've been told that gas particles need energy in order to move at all.
Yeah, that's true. But let's just address that guy's point, which is to say our opponents will immediately appeal to there already being gas pressure here and how that gas pressure that's already in existence in their argument behaves with gradients. So they say, how do you have, and ask us, burden of proof reversal fallacy, gas pressure gradients on a flat plane, just for the sake of this simplistic argument I'm making here. So they're asking us how we have gradients and dynamic systems. You go, what? Within the gas that we've managed to achieve in a vacuum? So in this picture, all of this high pressure gas, right, if we look at this cloud right on the edge here, that is right next to a vacuum. This black bit's vacuum, according to heliocentrism. That's your sky. So your sky is this black vacuum here, right next to high pressure gas. So they say, well, no, it just dissipates slowly into nothing. Like, no, it would all dissipate into the sky vacuum. You'd never have this scenario. You can't have a marble with high pressure gas stuck to it like it's velcroed on next to a vacuum. It doesn't work. So when they appeal to gas pressure gradients, it's the appeal to, well, we've got gas pressure anyway. I'm not going to explain how we achieved it without containment. I'm just going to ask you how a dynamic system works under the assumption we've already got gas pressure here. It's like, no. Our question is how you get the gas pressure in the first place, not if we assume we've got gas pressure in the first place, how do we have dynamic systems, which is how they reinterpret the question and ask it to us.
Yeah, the way that this conversation typically devolves, it's too cumbersome for me. It always has been, the gradient this and, oh my God, no, that's delta, how did, blah, blah, blah. I just do this. And if they don't get it, I'm like, have your Velcro air ball space, have it. So, okay, why does a balloon seem to lose? Well, what happens to a balloon after a while? They'll say, well, it loses the air. And I'll go, oh, so it's not because the air inside it is compressed or contracting in on itself or attracted in any way then. All righty then. That's the way I deal with it.
Yeah, gas doesn't go down. That's the bottom line. It expands in all directions. So in order for them to have this heliocentric version of a world with gas pressure stuck to it, they have to have gas going down to the centre of mass 1 with gravity. So gas is being pulled down. Well, gas doesn't get pulled down. That's not how it behaves. End of story. No sky vacuum. Space debunked. Go ahead, whoever it was.
Well, yeah, Who's going there first? Go
on, Brian. I'm going to say you.
Okay. Thank you. The problem is they start claiming that besides them, this starting from a delta X argument, but them already having gas pressure, they claim that the weight of the atmosphere is being pulled down by a force of gravity. Right now, I'm just going to pull a few of these things apart. Force of gravity thrown out the window in 1915 by Einstein doesn't exist according to mainstream science, but they're still asserting it, right? The weight of the supposed atmosphere, right? The atmosphere is, as we know, is an oxymoron. You can't have sphere-shaped air without a container. Now, the weight part, right, comes from them claiming that their atmosphere, right, has what they call mass. Right? Mass, right, in physics only means inertia. Gas is independent let's say, little molecules or whatever, atoms, they're independent of each other. They move around independently. They are unbonded, unattached to each other. The only thing that changes that is temperature, right? They can be phase changed back to being a liquid or whatever. But gas, as a gas, moves around independently, right? All these tiny little things do their own thing. They're not attached to any of the other tiny little things. They just bounce around all over the place. Now, they constantly move. So how could any one of those, well, for a start, you can't treat them all as a unit because they're not a unit, they're independent, number one. And number two, how could any one of them be considered mass? Because they're not exhibiting any inertia. Quite the opposite from that, are they not? So their term for mass, which is only just a description, that's all the word mass is. It's just a description. It doesn't mean anything. It just describes inertia. What inertia are they exhibiting? So the whole, all you have to go back to in physics what these things are, what they're agreed to be, and it's just like, how does that work with your force of gravity that was thrown out in 1950?
Indeed.
Sorry, I killed the party.
Yeah, they don't have a force, and this is something that Sleeping Warrior is currently in the chat. I was going to say barks on about, but that would be a bit demeaning to say that. But something that he focuses on, which is to say that as much as we can say they don't have a force anymore, it's out of date by 106 years, and then show them citations that make it absolutely clear. Cite Professor Brian Cox or George Musa or whoever else is making it explicitly clear that gravity is not a force. It doesn't change the fact that the anti-flat earthers, Sleeping Warrior, it's nice that we can now categorise the reason and whys and wherefores of why this argument's still held up 106 years, stinking like old fish. Well, it's because the anti-flat earthers need a force to hold gas pressure here, because it stands in violation of the second law of thermodynamics. It's not experiencing an entropy increase. Well, that's what gas does. So, yeah, it would experience an entropy increase. The gas would fill the space. Space is fake. What's that you say? Oh, there's a force that holds it. No, there isn't. It's not how gas behaves. Well, what's that you say? 106 years ago they said there was a force, so that's still going to hold gas here in homogeneous layers with the weight pulling it down. No. No, we don't have homogeneous layers of gas pushing down.
Can I read a funny comment that I just came across in the chat? Damn, I lost it.
You can, but I'll just read Sleeping Warrior's comment before you do. He says, No, Nathan Oakley, I defo don't bark on about this. It's the biggest argument, in my honest opinion. Barking is fine by me.
Don't worry, Sleeping Warrior. You can hound it all you want.
So, comment by the Akumu virus. Most gas law presupposes a container. Pressure is caused by the constraints of the container. The atmosphere uses weight to cause pressure, not a container, Sleepy.
Uses weight? Well, what, uses down vectors at 9.8 meters per second as per your gravity, Akum virus? No, gas does not go down, go boom boom. Weight is down. No, it does if you put it in a container. But ultimately speaking, gas expands in all directions. It does not go down, go boom boom with your weight claim.
Yeah, but
right before that, he says pressure is caused by the constraints of the container.
Yeah.
What container?
Well, no, he's claiming it's a presupposition. He's saying all the citations just presuppose you're going to have a containment. I mean, obviously, the V in PV equals nRT is just a presupposition. No, it's not. It's an antecedent to have the pressure. Without the container, there can be no pressure. End quote, conspiracy cats. You've got to have something to contain the gas. Otherwise, it's not contained. It'll just escape. Now, that escape... Hold on. That escape is the description in entropy. Yeah, it filling the availability of volume. In other words, if you've got a container with a hole in it, then the availability of volume is the container that it's within and also whatever's outside of it, because there's a hole. So the gas can follow its way through the hole into the rest of the volume it has available to it. So therefore, when you're calculating volume, it's not like, oh, well, we'll calculate this pipe and ignore it's got a hole in it. No, the accessible volume is everything outside of the pipe because it's not contained within the pipe. It's just that simple. That description, by the way, is the process of entropy. That's the second law of thermodynamics. And it's defined by having a sky vacuum. Right? Why am I getting the point, Rumpus? That's the point, right? As everyone's desperate to jump all over it. Right, this entropic law is gas behaviour, gas filling space in line with entropy. An entropy increase would be it filling the space. Now, that means we don't have space for gas to fill because it would fill it. This is the space they say your sky is, the sky vacuum. It isn't. I'm done. There you go.
Chocolate, read that again, please, from Virus.
I have to go up and find it. Give me a sec. Yeah. Sorry. Where the hell is it? All right, got it. Okay, it says most gas laws presupposes a container. Pressure is caused by the constraints of the container. The atmosphere uses weight to cause pressure, not a container sleeping.
So he's referencing gas laws as presupposing something? Could that be used on another topic?
First of all, what's an atmosphere?
Hold on.
Hang on. So, Myers, why don't you come on the show? Because this is interesting. You're saying that gas laws work on the presupposition. Is that what you're saying?
No, he's projecting his own presupposition of sphere-shaped air with weight, gas go down, go boom, boom, and saying the laws of gas that apply them to volumes, rightly so, because that's how gas behaves, is actually just a presupposition. And my stating sphere-shaped air by presupposing atmosphere, I'm not going to mention that that's a presuppositional statement that begs the question that air, which absolutely does not take the shape of a sphere and absolutely does take the shape of its containment, he's saying that the fact that it takes the shape of its containment is a presupposition as opposed to an antecedent.
Well, that's my
I'm not sure.
Atmosphere.
I'm not sure about that. I'd like for him to tell me what he meant by it, but I appreciate the clarity.
Well, I would attack it a little bit different, right? Because the word weight would be where I would go with it. Because the weight he's talking about is caused by mass times acceleration, right? So mass, as I said earlier, gas, atoms or molecules, whatever particles people want to call them for different reasons, they're termed different for different reasons. They move about independently, right, of each other. They don't exhibit any inertia whatsoever, right? So they don't resist acceleration. They are always moving at acceleration. They're not resisting anything. The only thing that stops them is when they bounce off of something, the container wall, or each other. That's what gas does, or something solid, wherever they can bounce off. So how can these singular gas atoms, right, we call them atoms for the sake of convention, how can they exhibit inertia? Because mass is inertia. For something to have weight in their paradigm, then inertia times acceleration. That's what it is. And what's inertia? It's a description. That's all it is. So it's a description times acceleration. Acceleration, another description. So it's description times description. Or if you want to say mass attracts mass, it's a description, which is all mass is. Description attracts description. That's what they're talking about. It's complete and utter nonsense.
Yeah, they're working outside of the convention. But with that, I am going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, though, if you are watching live, this is where we bid you farewell. So a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, hit the PayPal link, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley. Stay tuned if you're watching on a premiering stream, and I will see you all in the next video.